Before anyone conducts research, and for example inserts probes and electrodes in other people, they need to complete a specific form called an ethics application. And these applications are usually quite extensive. The researcher must describe every facet of their study in depth, such as the purpose of the study, how they plan to recruit participants, the precise tasks the participants must complete, how the data will be analysed and so forth. And in fact, these applications also include many other questions such as the risks of this study, how the data will be stored, the benefits of this study and so forth. So why do researchers need to complete these ethics applications? Are these applications intended merely to frustrate researchers? And if so, they certainly fulfil this goal. But actually these ethics applications do fulfil a vital purpose. So to illustrate, I want to conduct a study with everyone enrolled in this unit. If possible, I want you to flip a coin. Now if you flip heads, I want you to think of a specific example of these words. A specific example of a cheese, a saw, a shoe, and a chair. Now if you flip tails, I want you to specify the broader category to which each of these same words belong. So to what category does a cheese belong, a saw belong, a shoe belong, and a chair belong? Now I'll show you some pictures of dead people, and your task while looking at this picture is to hide your feelings. Now actually, I won't complete this study, partly because the research is unethical. As an aside, if people are asked to identify the word to which specific examples belong, they actually can inhibit their tendencies better and thus hide their emotions well. But that's not why I discussed the study. The reason I introduced this study was to illustrate some ethical principles. That is, this simple study did violate several principles. Try to guess the principles this study might have breached. Well, first, in most circumstances, individuals should not feel obliged to participate. They should feel they can refuse. Yet sometimes people are coerced explicitly. A manager could tell their employees they must participate in the study, an obvious violation of this principle. On other occasions, people are coerced implicitly or indirectly. For example, managers might only ask employees to participate, but the employees might be granted a choice but feel they should participate. Otherwise, they're worried they might not be promoted or something like that. So this illustration is an example of implicit or indirect rather than explicit coercion. And to avoid this implicit coercion, researchers should not recruit anyone with whom they can exert power. They should never recruit an employee or a student, for example, at least one of their own students. Second, researchers should not actively or deliberately deceive participants. That is, they should not present false information, such as telling participants that a test they completed indicates their unintelligence. Or if they do need to deceive participants to test some specific hypothesis, they should at least concede and address this deception later. Now actually this principle is not as straightforward as it might first appear, because to illustrate in this study, I didn't indicate why I asked you to specify examples or categories associated with the four words. So I didn't tell you that this exercise really activates one of two mental states, either a focus on details or a focus on broader patterns. But I didn't actually convey anything inaccurate either. But I would argue that my omission is not really deception, because you wouldn't expect me to clarify the purpose of the exercise precisely. So even if you later discovered the truth about this exercise, you wouldn't actually feel deceived. You've not developed beliefs that are incorrect. So therefore, I would define deception as any study that could generate erroneous beliefs in participants. But at least this discussion highlights that the issue of deception is subtle. Third, the study must be sensitive to the culture of participants. Now this study is insensitive. Showing dead people could violate the customs of some Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander communities, for example. Now one complication, however, is that no study can definitely accommodate every cultural norm and practice in the world. So really, the principle probably needs to be refined. If I was deliberately recruiting people from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, well, this study would clearly be unsuitable. But look, if I was inviting participants from around the world with Facebook, the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander participants might be limited, and I might not be expected to accommodate all Indigenous communities. Finally, the fundamental ethical principle is that the benefits of research should always outweigh the risks. Now, risks include psychological concerns such as depression, social concerns such as embarrassment amongst friends, physical concerns such as like a sore back, and legal concerns as well. But the benefits of studies, however, are vague. We can't really determine the benefits. It's very difficult to define the benefits or merits of research. So hence we can't just readily decide whether the benefits do outweigh the risks. So normally we just attempt to minimise the psychological, social, physical and legal risks. So why are these ethical principles so important? Why am I rabbiting on about ethics? Why are universities and other institutions obsessed with ethics? Well, first, ethics is obviously important to protect the public from researchers. That is, research is designed to improve the well-being of society. Research that harms people obviously contradicts this goal. Second, these ethical principles are intended to preserve the reputation and status of the university. If ethical principles are violated, the public might denigrate or even sue the university. And third, and just as importantly, these ethical principles are intended to preserve the reputation of research in general. If ethical principles are violated, people begin to question the merits of research. They might not participate in research. Funding bodies might no longer fund research and so forth. As an interesting example of ethics violations, in the early 1970s, Dr. Henry Murray conducted studies that were commissioned by the CIA, and these studies were designed to assess methods of mind control. And one method involved shattering the confidence of individuals. So in practice, participants were asked to, say, discuss their aspirations, and then in this condition they were belittled and informed they'd never reach these aspirations and so forth. Now, one of the participants responded very harshly, and his name was Ted Kaczynski. And Ted Kaczynski is actually known as the Unabomber, a man who mailed many bombs from the late 1970s to 1995, killing several people and injuring many more. Now, Ted Kaczynski was perhaps exhibited autism spectrum disorder when he was young. He played beside, not really with, other children. But his IQ was about 167, very high. And yet he changed quite dramatically after the study, perhaps as a consequence of the unethical nature of this research. And he actually ultimately became a terrorist in response to his perception that modern technology was eroding freedom. And he's now serving 8 life sentences.